Hello, welcome to FHE on the Road with Christine Stevenson. This podcast is designed to connect the people and the places from the past with your lives today, with 5-minute stories and facts from church history. Save these stories for when you are traveling through these areas to bring history to life. Okay, welcome back to FHE on the Road with Christine. Today we're going to tell the story of the miracle of the quail, which happened during the Exodus of Nauvoo. And this story is so incredible. I love it so much. I love hearing the miracles of God. There is a talk given by Dallin H. Oaks entitled Miracles, and he gave it in May of 2000. In his talk, he said the definition of a miracle is, quote, a beneficial event brought about through divine power that mortals do not understand and of themselves they cannot duplicate. End of quote. I love that definition. I think it's so amazing to think that God can give us these miracles, these things that we truly can't understand or explain or duplicate. He says, miracles happen every day in the work of the church and in the lives of its members. End of quote. And I have seen that so many times in my life. I love seeing the miracles of God. That's why I love doing this podcast. I love gathering these stories and seeing how God has helped all of these people throughout history. I love understanding that God has a plan for us and that He will help us accomplish His work on the earth. It's so incredible. So I have heard the story of the miracle of the quails before, but when I was studying the life of Mary Fielding Smith, this is when it was kind of brought to my attention again. And I started doing a deeper dive into it because studying Mary Fielding Smith, I was like, was she there for this? What happened? What exactly happened during this time? Again, doing a little bit of a deeper dive into it. This is what I found out. So hopefully you like it. Let's start here. From the very start of the restoration of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the saints have been run out of their homes on multiple occasions, and Nauvoo to Salt Lake was the last great exodus for the members of the church. Many members were not prepared to leave their homes and their town that they'd built up, and it was so beautiful. It must have been so hard. But after the death of the prophet Joseph Smith and his brother Hiram, tensions grew so much that the members were forced to leave. It would have been so scary. Many of those people would leave with little to no money or provisions, being forced to leave because of the Battle of Nauvoo. That's another thing I hadn't really heard a lot of. Brigham Young and a large group of saints started making their way west earlier in the year, but many saints, like Mary Fielding Smith, didn't have the money to start on the journey. And the mob was getting crazier and crazier. It was hungry to get all the saints out of Nauvoo, and tensions got higher and higher, and it culminated in the Battle of Nauvoo. It was pretty hard reading about the Battle of Nauvoo. It sounded so painful because you think of the people that were left there. They were the sick and the poor left in Nauvoo. These weren't people that were prepared to fight. The Battle of Nauvoo occurred after many of the saints left. It was the summer of 1846. And the tensions of the mob violence grew in Nauvoo, with whippings and kidnappings happening around town. The state militia was called in to calm the area, but that didn't work, and tensions mounted. There was even a treaty signed by both parties in hopes to avoid bloodshed, but that didn't work. Turns out the mob doesn't like not getting what they want. It's so frustrating that the saints, these poor, sick saints, couldn't get the help that they needed to get out of town. I'm sure they wanted to leave, but then to have the mob on top of it, it's so hard. The mob wanted the saints to leave immediately. They took matters into their own hands to make it happen. So there was a man named Thomas Brockman who was the mob leader. He led 1,000 men to advance against these poor saints left in Nauvoo. There were only 150 men from the saints that were able to try to come and defend their families. This little band of 150 men were able to defend themselves for 1 week of the advancing mob. And that's pretty good considering what they were facing. 150 men against 1,000 men. Ugh, I hate that this happened. They had little to no guns and ammunition because most had left with the saints. These men did their best to protect their families and their city from the mob overtaking them. In the end, they were largely outnumbered, and the sick and the poor families of Nauvoo were driven out of the city by this terrible, vicious mob. I hate this. I hate that they did this. During the Battle of Nauvoo, 3 members of the church died, and many on both sides were wounded. On September 16, 1846, a church leader by the name of Daniel Wells concluded that this, quote, small band of men, end of quote, could not hold the city. They retreated to spare more lives from being taken. a treaty was signed where the city was turned over to the mob men and the members of the church were required to leave. Like the treaty that was signed before, that treaty didn't hold and it didn't mean much to the mob men. Even after the treaty was signed, the mob did not leave the members of the church alone to gather their belongings and leave, which is so frustrating. I can't believe this happened. It makes me so upset. And then you think of poor Mary Fielding Smith and her family being there and being so scared. I hate that this happened. The mob continued to harass men and women who were preparing to leave with their families. They would ransack their homes. The mob men would go through their wagons as they were trying to leave town. They went to the temple. These terrible mob men went to the temple, up the tower, and rang the bell, yelling at the remaining members still in Nauvoo. Some people were even pushed out of their city by gunpoint. These members being harassed were, again, the people who were too sick and too poor to leave with the members earlier. The members had no choice but to cross the Mississippi River and camp on the other side and wait for help to come. One of the members was being pushed out by mob violence was Mary Fielding Smith, who was recently widowed. They gathered their family and belongings to move, ready or not. Mary was with the group of saints that were able to witness the miracle of the quail. It was just across the Mississippi River from Nauvoo, a town called Montrose, Iowa, near Potter's Slough, where the Latter-day Saint refugees made camp. Many of these people only had food enough for that day. They had no shelter, and many used blankets as tents. This group of saints were in bad shape. The fear of the mob in Nauvoo, no food, no shelter, not knowing what to do next, was terrifying. The Lord knew of their hardships and sacrifice and blessed them with the miracle of the quail. This happened on October 9th, 1846. A flock of quail landed on the camp of these exhausted and hungry members of the church. The quail landed everywhere from the top of their wagons, right in front of them. Some quail even went inside tents of refugee saints. These struggling, hungry saints were able to catch and eat these birds for food for their starving families. About 650 people were fed that day as a gift from God. Isn't that incredible? I love that. It was a reminder to the suffering saints that the Lord was with them. He had never left them and would help. This miracle has been compared to the Old Testament story in Exodus 16. Just like the Lord took care of the children of Israel, the saints being exiled in Nauvoo, He truly takes care of us today. It's so incredible that these saints had no idea what to do. They were homeless and without food, and they knew they were in desperate shape. And the Lord knew they were in desperate shape, and He totally pulled through for them. I love that He sent them food, literally just falling from the sky. It was like, you're hungry, here's some food. I love that. I love that our Heavenly Father truly takes care of us and watches out for us. It's so incredible. There is a talk that given by Elder Holland, talking about how the Lord watches out for us, and it says, quote, "God is aware of our burdens and will strengthen us to strengthen others. This does not mean our problems will always disappear or the world will suddenly be at peace, but neither do your prayers fall on deaf ears. Heavenly Father hears the prayers of the widowed, the divorced, the lonely, the overwhelmed, the addicted, the ill, and the hopeless. Everyone," end of quote. And I know that God hears us and He answers our prayers. I know that He won't leave us lost and alone. I can't imagine these saints running for safety from these mobs. They literally left and didn't even have any food. And the Lord provided. And I know He provides for us today. And I'm so grateful for Him. It's so incredible. I love these stories. I love these church history stories. I love that we can learn how God works. And I know these church history stories are made for us today to learn. Anyways, hopefully you learned something. Thanks. Thank you for listening to FHE on the road today. We hope you enjoyed what you've heard. Please like, subscribe, and share with anyone who'd be interested in these stories. Thanks.